Hey everyone, Tyson, you with me?
Oh, I'm here. I'm excited. I know everyone else is excited. Are you all ready? This one has been requested for so long, and I get the honor and the privilege of introducing my friend and our excellent host today, Eric. He's one of our campus experts. He's been with SketchUp for a while, and he's been using SketchUp for a long time. And this is going to be very exciting. So, Eric, do tell us what you have in store.
Yeah, I mean, the first question I think some of you might have that I have, which is why didn't you do this sooner? Which is a good one. And well, it's because rendering, as Aaron says, he says it's not a lot of fun for people to watch just pixels sort of appear on the screen as it takes a while. The other thing is rendering is kind of complex. There's a lot of little setting control. We got to dial this in, test it, adjust this, test it. This is not, it's V-Ray, so it's not one click, press the preset and you're done, you can walk away. So some people might find that going into settings and in that fine tune adjustment, it's just not their cup of tea. But that's okay because for those that are, like for myself, I actually love that. I geek out on that. Just like when I watch Tyson and Aaron and they model and they're, how are we going to do this? We're going to use follow me. We're going to use a spline. Just that kind of problem solving and getting into the weeds. I just find that exciting. So I hope everyone that's joined does too.
I think so. We've definitely got a lot of interest and eagerness to roll forward. So I think as we'll go forward, we've got people coming in from all over the place. It is awesome to see y'all here. Thank you for joining us. So do jump in, Eric. Let's get started. This is going to be fun, and I'm going to start calling out some people, some places as we go. But yeah,
Yeah,
take
now
us
that's right.
on this rendering journey.
Before I get started, I think I'm going to say a little disclaimer in that the fact that I've got a list of things that I would love to do to get us to a finished render state, meaning we're starting literally from scratch from the model you see here, which I'll talk about in just a second. And we're going to see if we can get all the way to a finished product in 2 hours or less. Maybe it's ambitious. I don't know. If we're going to talk, if we got a lot of questions, it might slow the process down a little bit. We might not get to the end, but that's the goal. And if I go a little fast, it's not because I'm trying to like show how good I am at this or anything. It's just that I'm just going to go at my natural speed. And because we're recording, obviously you can go back and press pause, you can go back and scrub or whatever. So I'm not going to do this like really slowly, step by step as if you're following along. And I think we all get that. We've all been doing live modeling before, so I think that's understood. So I'm
That
going to go
is
ahead and,
totally fine.
if that's all right with everyone here, I'm going to go ahead and switch
One
over.
thing, Eric, let me check in. We're getting some feedback, and I'm hearing this too. Your audio is a little choppy, and I'm hearing that mine is as well.
Hang on. Let me try that. I just muted
Is
my.
if the levels are okay, let us know because we can dial that back a little bit. I apologize. We don't have our best technicians on here. Eric and I are not. Uh, so
Tyson,
I don't
I
know if
just.
there's something on the streaming side that we can fix, but we'll try to address it as if we can. We may or may not be able to get that. Unfortunately, the first time that we bring bring Eric on, kind of some of the growing pains as we get the new setup working.
Yeah, sorry about that. Maybe when we switch to our next screen here, maybe that'll help
Let's
things. So
try.
I'm going to go ahead and switch to our main render window and we'll just get started. And if there's anything I can do to adjust the settings as we go, I'll try to do that. I'm using AirPods and they usually work fine. They usually work okay on these meetings.
Is that your mic? Like
The
you've got a
mic,
separate mic though.
yeah, it's the mic. It's the mic and the audio for me.
I'm curious.
Well, how bad is it? Because I mean, if it's if it's not coming through, then that's going to be. We might want to just press pause and take a couple minutes. But if it's just not perfect, I don't know. Maybe we have to push through.
It's not the. It's I think it's coming through okay. It's It's just not the highest quality.
Well, I'll have to apologize to everyone for that, and hope that at least you can hear. If you can hear me, I think that's what we'll have to work with at this point. Okay, should I keep going, Tyson?
Well, go forward. Go forward. Yeah, go forward. We'll
we'll roll with it.
I think we can work with this.
All right.
I'm going to call out. Hey, welcome everybody. Just so you go ahead and set up your scene. We've got our usual gangsters in here, but we've got also people coming in from all over. It is so awesome. Newfoundland, got Vancouver, we've got India, got Nigeria. I mean, how amazing is that? Coming in from all over. Oh, Alaska, our friend Sai, is, and our usual trio or so from the UK. Welcome, guys. Bulgaria, that's amazing. Halifax, Toronto, even. This is awesome. I always love seeing everybody coming in here all times a day. That's amazing. Matt does suggest on the OBS input, turn off the noise suppression. So if you pull up OBS quickly and go into that mic setting and turn off noise suppression, we'll see if that helps.
Let me do that then.
And Scotland. Thanks, Paul.
Suppression level. Okay.
And thank you all for bearing with us for a moment. Hopefully this will improve things, and we're going to keep going.
All right.
Ohio.
I'm going to turn off noise suppression. Did that change anything for me? Tyson?
Well, carry on and we'll see. We'll get some feedback.
All right. Let's just do it because everyone's waiting and I'm sure everyone's excited like I am. So again, thanks for having me, and we're going to do the best we can. So hopefully, at the very least, you're going to learn something here today. So like we said when we're getting started, this is not a live modeling session. It's a little bit different. I'm actually going to be doing very little or no modeling. I'm going to edit this model. We're going to reconfigure this model. We're going to kind of reorganize this model. But for the most part, I'm starting off with the model that has been provided by, as you guys seen, if you've been following along with the live modeling, I think Tyson did one, and then Aaron did one, and Tyson did another session on this one. This was back in February. So we're going to take this and use that as our example. I love it because it's already just got really clean geometry, and it's kind of got a little bit of a low poly stylized vibe, which I think is going to lend itself perfectly to what we're doing here today. So Tyson, I'm going to talk. I'm not going to give you a lot of opportunities to interject, but obviously if somebody has a question or if somebody needs to see something or if there's a different way to do something, let me know. Just go ahead and interrupt me and I will, I'll pause. With that said, I'm just going to get started by popping into my V-Ray. I've got my toolbars up here on my left-hand side. So I'm on a Mac, so obviously things kind of float around. If you're on PC, you can probably dock them nice and neat. And I've got my tags and my entity info. This is all I really need at the moment because right now this first part of the process is really prep. Like I'm going to walk you through my process, not exactly what Chaos Group would do, maybe not what how you might use it necessarily, but I'm going to walk you through my process. And again, you can kind of cherry pick the things that you think are interesting. First thing I want to do is open up, this is the asset editor in V-Ray, and I'm going to go to the settings, and I'm going to click this little button here at the bottom. It says revert to default settings. So I want to make sure, first of all, that I'm not using any settings from a previous session or anything like that. I've sort of zeroed everything out. We're going to pop back into there in just a second. The first thing I do is I just kind of look at the model. Is the model ready to go or not? I check, I turn on my hidden geometry. There doesn't seem to be any stray line work. Good job, Tyson and Aaron. I turn on my hidden objects. You'll notice nothing.
That you can see.
As you can see, there's no hidden objects. Good job. There's always, with Tyson, there's always stuff off to the side. Not in this case. The next thing I do, and this is going to be kind of funny to see only because there's no materials applied, but I'm going to go ahead and click on my monochrome mode, and that's going to tell me if there's any reversed faces. And I already know there's one here, which is because it's a single-sided face on the cloth. So reverse faces give not just V-Ray, but all renderers, I think most renderers problems. So what we want to do is we want to check. I'm not going to fix that because I already know that I kind of want my camera. I already know I'm going to render from this side. So I'm going to go and ignore that one reversed face. But otherwise, I would go in and fix those reverse faces. And way to go again, Tyson and Aaron. You made this too easy for me. This model looks great. I'm going to switch off of monochrome. You can, if you see Mirage, it's what you do. I know. You guys are. It's kind of like it's kind of like you've done this before. All right, so the next step in the process, model looks great, it's checked out, it passes my sort of first test. The second thing we need to do is, if I come up over here and I turn my color by tag mode on, you'll notice that nothing happens because there aren't any tags. I think there was a couple from before, but it really was, they were kind of arbitrary, so I just reset them. There's no tags in this model. If you've got tags already, or you can go ahead and work with what you've got, but since I don't have any, I'm going to set up tags thinking ahead about how V-Ray is going to organize information and how I'm going to apply materials. So the first thing I do, and you don't have to do this, but I'm going to, careful now, explode the major groups, because what I want to do is I want to have more control over selecting things and applying them to tags. I'll give you an example. I'm just going to create a few tags. I'm going to call this one trees, and I'm going to say I know that I've got in my model ground. I'm applying the I'm setting up the tags based on the materials in the model. So I know that I've got wood, like for the raptors, you can call it whatever you want. The names aren't really that important. As long as you know that you've got sort of a tag representing all of the major elements of this model. Stone, what else do I have? I know it's a lighthouse, so you have glass, right? And I know that we have whatever the wall is not made out of wood. So I'm just going to call that S wall. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's plaster, maybe it's stucco. And then I know we've got these little flags hanging down, this cool little torn flag. I'm going to call that cloth. It doesn't really, I'm going to stop there because I might add a few more. Sorry, I'm dyslexic, so if it takes me like 7 times to type a word, that's why. So now I have my color by tag mode on, and I just want to make sure that I'm not using the same colors for all of these. The colors aren't important, but if they're all orange, it's going to make this a little bit harder. So I just want to kind of take a second to go through and give them different colors. And if you really want it to be like green for trees, you could go like wood for brown, brown for wood. You can do that. But now watch, when I go ahead and use this nifty new tag tool, I've got my tree selected, use my tag tool, bam, there's that one. Oh, how about shingles? We have shingles, don't we?
Is that, I missed it. Why do you label all these as S something? Is this your super? Is this your stupendous? Is this your superior?
No, it's just habit. I'll tell you, that's actually a good question. I don't have a good answer for it. It's just that in the industry, when you import CAD line work and you bring in landscape line work, it's L road, L path, L center line. If you bring in architecture, it's A. And I always wanted my 3D layers not to get mixed in with CAD layers. And now tags, obviously. And then I also realized when you bring something in from 3D Warehouse, it often is tagged without that prefix. And that's kind of a red flag for me. Like, wait a minute, that's a new tag that just showed up that shouldn't be there. Sorry, I could do this while I'm talking. So
and just we're still hoping that we can early on fix. Matt has one more suggestion for your audio. So if you pause for a moment and jump over to OBS,
yes.
in your advanced audio properties for your mic, switch your presenter mic to be monitor only, because Matt is suggesting it might be monitor and output. So again, thanks everybody for bearing with us. Sorry as we work out a few bugs, but hopefully.
How's that? Does that change it? I just switched it from, it was default by normal, or is it the same?
Yeah, so you changed it to monitor only? Your presenter mic?
Oh.
I think it's a little better, but we'll see.
No, I just switched it because it was on default, and I switched it to my Bluetooth headphones for the mic. I don't have that option for monitor only
Okay. I
presenter
do
mic.
think it is improving. I think that setting did improve. So let's keep going. We'll.
That,
I do think that helped.
oh my gosh, you
But yeah,
guys.
essentially, you've got old school habitual naming habits, and so that's and you know, one of these things that when Eric starts presenting and we sort of learn all of our different nuances, Eric is much better, maybe just because of his background, about like creating useful tags, naming them. Naming convention is better than Aaron and I. So maybe everybody here is just used to seeing the how lazy Aaron and I are, and then you come in here and you start tagging stuff meaningfully, and it's like, what's happening? What is this?
Yes.
We're not used to such beautiful organization. That's a totally new world.
Some of you, and that's okay if you think it's overkill, like, oh, you can automate this, or oh, you can set up a template. And I think that there's a lot of things like that. But to me, it's kind of like, think about Bob Ross, I mean, I think of this as like artistry. This is me scraping the paint onto the palette. You know what I mean? Like, this is okay for me to think that, oh yeah, I have to do this every time, even though you think, well, this is actually a lot of work. Oh, I don't know if you see what I'm doing here, but you'll notice that these rocks, there's I'm trying to select only just the rocks, but they're different instances. If I come in here and say select all instances, what it'll do is it'll find all the copies of those rocks. And then I can group those together. And then I can basically see there's another one that's by itself. I'm just trying to also share some modeling tips as well. So I'm grouping together all these instances so that I can basically have all of these rocks that are all by themselves. Um, I can apply that to the stone. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay. Sorry. Oh, look
Oh,
at that.
Aaron called me. Oh, well, you can do that too, right? That's an old school habit. Is you've applied a color, once you've applied a tag, then it changes color, and that way you know what you haven't applied to yet, right? Like that's the same thing as hiding something. You'll hide a tag,
Mm-hmm.
then start applying stuff to it, and then it just starts disappearing, and that way you know you're good.
Yeah, and for those that are kind of like getting bored here, this is just going to take me about 2 more minutes to get this, a couple more minutes to get these all tagged right. And of course, I could have done this. I could have gone into it, but I did want to be honest and say like this is part of the process for me, is to go in and do this. And depending on your model, if I was modeling myself, I would have already done all of this. I would have set this up as I was modeling, so I wouldn't come in like this necessarily after the fact. And have to go in and spend 10 minutes or whatever it is, or 8 minutes tagging these. But this is really, I'll show you, and I'm going to show you why in just a little bit, why this is really important.
Yeah,
One
that's
thing.
good. Keep going.
No, keep going. You can talk during this because like I said, I've got a couple more minutes. I just need to get the metal and the glass and the wall, and we're good to go.
And I think it's worth, because I render rarely, and I think sometimes I've gone in, and one of the ways you can approach V-Ray is just to apply materials, and then in V-Ray you can sort of take the sketch materials and supplement them or swap them out for V-Ray stuff. You have a more organized workflow where you just have this. You use tags a lot more, and for anyone interested, this is the method that Eric, I think, teaches in our V-Ray course over on campus. So, just using tags as a way to separate materials and different entities that you kind of want to address is it's a great method for organization. It's a great method for control. And so I can't speak for everybody, but I trust that the 5 or 10 minutes you're taking to kind of show how you set up a successful render, that's a huge part of this, right? So it's all good.
It's all good. It's all good, man. So that's it basically. Wait, I got my wall. Oh, you know what we need to do? Sorry, these are the little things, but that's why the color by tag mode really helps because it goes to tell you this is a little bit harder. I don't want to explode this because it's a component and it's the same one that's on the other side. So in this case, what I want to do is I'm actually going to go into this one. I'm actually going to go into a component. And what's cool about this is I've got glass. So now I've got one component that's made up of two materials. So it's going to have two tags. So I'm going to go glass for the inside and I'm going to go metal for everything except the glass. So again, I'm just thinking through what is what I'm gonna apply materials to. And this 10 minutes of worth, you got to trust me. And Tyson, I think you did a great job trying to build some faith for me to say that you will see how much time we're going to save in just a couple of minutes when we start applying real materials. Because I mean that's really so much of what we're doing in V-Ray. It's like we're not materials and lighting and then render settings, and that's it. Yeah. All right. So let's get this wall done so we can call it a day, and then we can be done. Wall and ground.
Well, you're planting some fertile seeds. First of all, Aaron's called me out for being rude for suggesting that he tags poorly, although I still might stand by that. And this other people are suggesting that Aaron and I better step up our game now that you've shown clearly how organized it's possible to be. That we better start taking notes. So, oh, don't worry, you've got some people out here that are taking your side.
You know what? Like I said, well, that's why I made the disclaimer in the beginning. I said, this is my process. You can disregard any parts of this that you think this guy's full of it. This takes way too long. I know a better way. I am not the best render V-Ray expert. I just know just enough to be dangerous, which I think is a fun place to be, especially with this crowd.
You're the best. You're the best that we have available. So I mean, that's a low bar when you're comparing to the rest of us. I'm not saying you are very good, but you're good. You're the best that we can work with.
So that's it. I'm done here. That was not too painful, I hope. When I turn color by tag off, you'll notice that there's, again, we're back to the white. There's no materials in this model because it was, I'm lucky enough in a way to get a clean model. I'll give you an example though, is if Tyson and Aaron did come in here and let's just say they went into the default library, what would this be? I don't care, stone. Maybe there's a material here and I'm going to just bear with me here for 1 second because I want to give you an example. What I would do is if somebody had already done this model for me, what I would do is I would come in here and almost the first thing I do is, not always, but depending on where the model came from and what materials, how good the materials are, I'm probably going to come to material tools and I'm going to remove them anyway. So that was kind of like I was starting with a blank model, but I would use this materials tools extension and I'd say remove from that selection. So I often start blank. If I'm not modeling myself, if someone gives me one, I'll often wipe it and I'm starting clean. So here's a great segue point where we get to decide which way we want to go. We can either go lighting, entourage, render settings. There's 15 different ways we can go. I'm going to suggest, though, from my experience, that we don't put in entourage and we don't play with render settings yet, because I think that the more you start putting heavy stuff in the model, the more your little test renders are going to start to go slow. So to me, I want to build up so that it's getting sort of more and more complex. It's getting richer and richer as you go. So we're sort of putting the high poly and the high, like the lighting center, the glare and the light bounce and all that stuff. We're going to do that sort of more towards the end, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
That's okay. Well, I'm controlling the screen, so this is what we're doing.
That's right.
I asked, like,
you're running.
What do you guys want to do next? So
we want to see some rendering.
I know, you're like, can you render already? You guys have been talking for 20 minutes. So I'm in the asset editor. I've already reset it to the defaults just to show you that I'm starting clean. I'm not playing any tricks. One thing I do, this is call it my initial render settings. I switch to interactive because everything from this point on until I'm ready to do my final rendering is going to be interactive. So there's no reason to do a static render at this point. We're going to drop the settings all the way to low, keep things moving quick. Denoiser, I'm only going to put on, it doesn't matter. Denoiser takes the noise out. It doesn't matter for interactive. I'm just putting it on right now so I don't forget later when I switch from interactive to my static render. And then there's two other things I do here. In render output, I like to render personally to match my viewport. And I do that because otherwise you get things that are being cropped off, and your camera angle can kind of get messed up a little bit. So if I know I'm always matching my viewport, unless I want like a square aspect ratio or a portrait aspect ratio, in which case I would change. But most often we render landscape anyway, right? Kind of a wide, almost like a cinematic. And I'll switch that to 900.
I don't. I gotta get on TikTok. I run your portrait all the time.
That's right.
My TikTok is exploding.
That would be the most fun. That would be the most fun TikTok channel ever, of just watching me do render settings.
TikTok.
Change my render settings.
Okay.
All right.
Carry on.
Okay, you can see I'm pointing at my screen. You can't see where I'm pointing. I'm pointing that, okay, I've set the render output. I've minimized it to as small as it can go because I want it to go fast. And the last thing, this is totally optional, but under global illumination, I like to click the advanced settings, and by default, I turn ambient occlusion on. So they hide it under this advanced rollout. I don't know why. I feel like it should always be on. So to me, I'll bump that up to like 3. I want to see that. I like to see that. I'm just going to go ahead and put AO. Ambient, or what's called ambient occlusion. So that's on. That's it. So my initial render setup was really simple. Let's do it. Mark the time. We are now rendering.
Yes.
And please tell me if anything doesn't work, or if it's not showing properly, or if I can't see something. So just tell me. So there it is.
Oh, hey, here's a collective note.
Save. Oh, yeah. No, I don't know if you can see my corner.
You just did all that tag work.
I just did all that tag work. Yeah, I did. Would hate to lose. Okay, so you'll notice that I've got all these great colors organized, but V-Ray doesn't see that. It doesn't recognize any of my tags because it doesn't care about tags. It cares about materials. So that's where we're going now. I'm going to go ahead and stop my interactive render. You're going to see me do this a lot. Start, stop, start, stop. So whenever I make changes to my settings, I will stop the render. Because there's a small chance that you could crash it. Like if you're doing something really complex, like you're going into your material settings and you're randomizing the UV placement, sometimes the interactive render says, oh, too much, and it quits. So I'll often stop it, make a change, and then I'll start it again. You'll see that quite a bit. So who wants to let's do some materials. I'm going to turn my color by tag off. You know that I rendered it. I'm going to leave this here, but I'm just going to kind of create some screen real estate for you. I'm going to try not to move things too much. And I'm going to pop over to the materials section, which is the default material library in V-Ray, which is the far left icon. And then here are the materials that are in the model, mostly just entourage. And then if you click out this little fly out here, what you're going to see is this is the materials that come. So if you just downloaded V-Ray for the first time and installed it, you may actually have to download the library separately. So just a heads up, give yourself some time for that. Let's do this. I'm going to grab, this is the fun part. Okay, this is the fun part. Now that we've done the hard work, I need to find a color for my tree, a color for my ground. So I'm going to start with grass, and I'm going to start with my grasses and my grounds first. I want to go with this light green. Now, if I select something in my model like this, if I select my trees, I don't even have to bring that material into my material section of V-Ray. I can just say apply to selection straight from the library. And then what it'll do is it'll carry over by itself. That's pretty cool. But there's a little, but what if I've got, all right.
I need a Matt sound effect for that. That was like, drum roll, cymbal crash.
What if,
that was awesome.
Well, hang on, I want to one up that. But what if I've got this thing where I've got a material that needs to be applied to a selection, but it's inside of a component. So really I want it to apply here, 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 here. I'm doing all the shingles. So it's a multiple selections. Well, that's going to be kind of hard because if you do it that way, you got to do it one at a time. So in this case, what I'm going to do is come over here to my stone. Forgive me if I bounce around a little bit. I'm going to find a nice granite texture that I think is going to look good. I'm going to actually pull that into my material. So now it's actually in my sort of model, so to speak. And then from there, you can right click and it says apply to layer, which of course is apply to tag. Ooh. So now this is where I'm going to go watch it. If I did this right, I'm going to say apply it to my shingles. and it's going to do it to all the shingles. It doesn't matter how deeply nested. It doesn't matter how deeply nested it is. It'll do it to everything throughout the entire model because we were thinking ahead, right? We were thinking ahead. So that was my wow moment.
There it is.
Now you can do that. So let's do that a couple.
I need trumpet fanfare.
No, I like your sound effects better than Matt's. Oh my gosh.
There were questions earlier about like, you know, what fully is the setup for there? I think you just nailed it. So if you missed it, a huge part of the reason why Eric separated things into tags, as you'll see, is that instead of digging into nested components and nested groups and things like that, he's got all of the roof tiles, which were nested differently, but he put them all in the same layer and was able to apply a material to layer. So that is a killer tip.
Apply to layer. And in this case, I'm doing glass. You'll notice I've got the lighthouse and I've got the window. So if I go switch over to apply to layer and I swing down to glass, I find it. Of course, this is why being very, to me, I call it, you know, I don't think OCD is a bad thing, you know, when it comes to model management, because this is where I get to like shine because all my OCDs come out. It's like Monica from Friends, where she's like, oh, yes, I get to be myself.
That's right.
I have two.
You're Monica in our group of friends.
I am. Thank you.
I'm going to call you. That is a compliment, sure.
Okay, now let me stop there because I think I'm almost done. Save. Here's what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go into, here's the problem is I have now one group that needs two different materials. So now that's not going to work because I didn't separate out this from top ground, bottom ground. This is just, I just said ground. So in this case, I can go in. It doesn't even have to be a group. I'm going to go in, select the top of the ground, come back in here, and I want my grass, my lighter grass, not my green grass. That's what I used for my tree. So my kind of modeled grass, I'm going to say apply to selection. So as you can see, now it's applied it to raw geometry. So I'm both applying to raw geometry and applying to groups. It depends on, some people might say, well, you really shouldn't apply it, should always apply it to raw geometry. And some people say, that doesn't matter. So I'll let you guys argue that in the chat. For me, I find that I apply it however it's fast. I might break best practices from time to time, because at the end of the day, I mean, are we not all working on a deadline? Do we all not need to, like, I do need to balance my OCD a little bit with you know, getting work done. So now you might like this and say, okay, now there's two materials I did not apply, and they are the wood and the stucco. And I'll tell you why. Because I found that I don't like any of the ones in the default library. So I have two materials that I found online that I'm going to apply in just a second. But I also wanted to show you that we're not stuck with the way that V-Ray, the default scale that V-Ray applies. So like if I see this tree texture here that I used a grass texture for, if I don't like the scale of that, I can just come in here. You can do it two ways. You can either do it in your colors and model. You can double click it and it's going to, hang on. Is that the right one? No, it's that one. Sorry, I clicked the wrong one. You can see down here where there's a little scale. In this case, I'm just going to double that. It's 6 feet or 2 meters by default. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, let's call that, I don't know, 12 feet. And what's going to happen is you can see, if you saw that, if you were looking at the tree and not the materials browser, it doubled in scale. You can also do it here in the V-Ray window. I try not to do it in here because what I found is that the deeper I go into these settings, the more I screw things up. So I try to stay like on the surface, like on the top, and I try not to go down. I try not to go down too deep because I'll end up messing something up. I hope that you can all relate to that.
Do show us, Eric. Just kick a small render and let's see what the few materials look like now.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Need a render sound effect. Render.
Oh, we do.
Okay.
We'll add that to the.
So you can see that the ambient occlusion that I added, if I zoom in here, and I'm going to give it a second. We're going to try not to bounce around too much so that you can see it. But you can see that you're getting that light bounce on the corners where the joints come in. That's really nice. That's kind of a game, kind of a stylized look that I'm going for. Um, the other thing that you can see is if we come up here to the tower, the metal is giving us a really nice already reflection because it's a PBR material. So it's got all of those. It's not just bump. It's got all of the sort of, I don't know, advanced settings applied already, which is why I like to start in the V-Ray default library, because if you can find it there, it's way easier than going and downloading it online and finding the maps and relinking the maps. To me, I think that just takes a little while. Can you see what's here? Here's a quiz to this group. Can you see anything that's wrong with the way that this render is looking right now?
Not if you want a one-way window.
A one-way window. Yeah, there you go. Well, I was asking the group, but maybe.
Oh,
No, it's fine, Tyson. You are the group. I'm going to turn my metal. Oh, look at that. See, this is what happens when you're going fast and you're talking, is you miss the little things. That goes to my metal tag. So what's happening here, and this is where I'm going to pick on Aaron and Tyson for their modeling, is that the glass in SketchUp can be a single face. Glass in V-Ray does not like to be a single face. It likes to have a thickness. So what I'm going to do, this is like teaching a class. How would I apply thickness to this curved surface?
oh, I know.
Okay.
So do some people in the chat.
Tyson, should I answer, or do you want to take it first? It's curved, right? So I mean, it's a little bit tricky. It's not just using the push-pull tool. I can't do that. So how can I give this glass a thickness real fast? And while you're talking, I want to make this a component, so I only have to do it once.
Yeah. I think some people out there will know of a little preferred plugin, a favorite plugin called Joint Push Pull. It's been around a while. That is quite the favorite. Of course, you could just offset, build a new surface, and sort of create it as well. So you could use native tools, but yeah, at this point, I assume that you're just going to pull up a little joint push pull, because that will certainly make this easy.
Yeah, if that's okay with you all, that's exactly what I'm going to do. What I was doing while you were talking was making this a component, because I didn't want to joint push pull each one. I only want to do it one time, so let's go ahead and just do it once. And I've saved. You'll notice I'm saving before you do anything really funky with extensions. Just do a quick save. Pareto collection, joint push pull. I'm going to go and thicken it. And I have two options. I can go in or I can go out. It depends on where it sits on the windowsill. To me, it doesn't really matter. What you may have to do, though, is you may have to reverse faces. So just kind of, here's a heads up. I'm going to give that a thickness of 1 inch. And double check to make sure I didn't accidentally invert those faces. Are we good? We're good. Look at that.
Looks pretty.
Love it when it does. Do you love it when it does?
Love it.
What you want it to do?
Now, just to clarify, and I think you're showing the better method. So, and if you intended to do this later or with this one, you can make single faces work, right? You just have to apply the material to the inside and outside of the face, the both sort of surfaces. Is that is that your understanding, or you just don't like how it works?
No, it's more than that. It actually can. It has to do with also how it refracts, because it's a single face. So if it's a flat plane, you're probably okay using a single face. If it's a curved plane, it's actually going to distort geometry. So that'll happen also if you're using a reverse face. So if you look at your glass and it's a curved face and you see distorted geometry, or you see the dark glass like this, that's a clue that either your face is reversed or you need to give it a thickness. I don't know. That's a great question. Maybe you can get around it by applying it to both sides, but but on a curved face, I don't know if that's going to help us either way. So I'm going to go do that again, because I want to keep going. I want to move a little faster, actually, because I want to get to the more fun stuff. Thickener, in this case, I'm going to give that 0.5 inches. That's a lantern, so it's going to be like a little thinner, right? Okay, so to wrap, oh, wait, hang on, sorry. I want to go let's test render that. Let's see if we fixed our problem. Did we fix it? Well, there we go. Looking sweet. I'm going to ignore the fact that this window looks onto the stone right now, because it would take me a little bit of effort to remove the stone behind the window. So just pretend you don't see that for this demo. So wrap up our materials. I mean, there's a lot more we can get into with materials, but because I'm trying to like just give a really kind of high level and get us all the way to the finish line, I'm going to do two more materials, which is I want to bring them from a custom source that I've downloaded, and then I want to apply those, and then I want to apply some PBR, which is photorealistic attributes to those, so that we're getting them so they don't look flat and fake. They look realistic the same way that all of our materials that we've already applied are starting to look. So
now, just to get ahead of the crowd, can you explain the difference between the PBR material and the PBJ material? Because I'm partial to the PBJ material. I love me some PBJ, especially when it's crunchy.
well, my
I'm
problem.
sure that question will come up.
Okay, that's an excellent question. I should have started with that.
No,
First of all, I'm not a huge fan.
PBR stands for what?
PBR is physically based PBR rendering. So it's basically means that it's using all of the things like light caustics, reflections, bumping, normals, so displacement. It's all of these sort of hidden layers that are applied on top of. So imagine like in this case here, I just see in SketchUp, I just get one material. That's what V-Ray calls the diffuse map. It's essentially one of many maps that you sort of compress them all, and we treat it as one material in SketchUp, but V-Ray treats it as a multi-material. So I know that for somebody else who does rendering full time, they're probably like, that was kind of a crappy description, but that's sort of it in a nutshell.
Yeah, you nailed it. It has multiple attributes that layered up make a really compelling material.
Yep.
But it's not as tasty as PBJ. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, my daughter loves
Does PBJ translate? I don't know.
Okay, you got to explain peanut butter and jelly for people who didn't get the PBJ.
Peanut butter and jelly.
I'm going to do the same thing here.
It's crunchy peanut butter. It's got to be crunchy.
All right. I'm cutting you off.
I'm going on a tangent.
Go get yourself a sandwich and come back, and I'll do.
I'm going to make a sandwich.
Go make a sandwich.
Carry on.
All right, hang on. I got to remember what I was doing. So Tyson and I were talking. We were bantering about sandwiches, but what I was doing was I was importing, and I exploded two materials: the stucco wall and the wood that I've kind of found this sort of distressed, seamless texture. Seamless being the key. If you're searching for materials, most often you're going to want a seamless texture. So because of the tiling, which is you'll notice the V-Ray textures here are all seamless. You don't seeing the edge of the image as it repeats. Those are the kinds of explanations I'm trying like not to give because they take extra time. But if anybody has a question, please stop me. What I'm going to do is apply those the same way. So this wood texture, you'll notice that's the one I just brought in. So I'm going to apply this texture that I brought in the same way that I applied the ones from the library. I'm just going to right click it, apply to layer, and I already know because I'm organized, because I'm OCD, I'm applying it to my wood. And if you look at the model in the background, if I did it right, you'll see that it applies it everywhere. And some of you might say, well, your wood grain doesn't go that way. And you're absolutely right. I might actually do two materials, one with the grain going this way and one with it that way. I think you're just going to have to forgive me for this one in that the wood grain is probably not going the right direction on all of these, but this is a stylized render. I'm going to say it's okay. What was the other one? Plaster, right? So we got to apply that to the wall. And then I want to show you a render and show you what that looks like. All right, save. Oh, no one called out that we didn't material the cloth, the little torn up cloth.
Well, I mean, I was distracted by sandwiches.
All right. It is lunchtime here where we are. I don't know about where everybody else is. Maybe that's why.
Instead of peanut butter jelly, I mean, I trust that there's a lot of people joining us, from a nice pub, and maybe they're getting fish and chips or something. I'm thinking of our UK friends, but elsewhere it could be something else. So I don't know. If you're joining us and you've got a nice dinner, let us know what you've got, because apparently I've got food on my mind. I tell you what, though. No, sorry.
No need to apologize.
What's that?
No need to apologize. We're all friends here.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
One thing that is coming up in the chat that I thought I'll talk a little bit too, or you can talk a little bit too while you work and keep going. Is there's some questions about the nature of V-Ray as a renderer versus SketchUp, and whether or not SketchUp has native rendering tools, and that V-Ray is, it's expensive if you're, coming at this new. That's all true, and we're not suggesting you have to use V-Ray. There are multiple rendering engines out there. This V-Ray is a very professional, very high-level one, and it is included with SketchUp Studio, even though we know most people joining us won't be on Studio. But the rendering, the stuff you're doing, hopefully will have wide application, not exactly in the exact settings, but just in the way that you can set things up, that you can leverage materials. A lot of SketchUp compatible renderers will, work with SketchUp materials. So there's no native rendering, photorealistic rendering tool within SketchUp. SketchUp's native rendering is what we call NPR, non-photorealistic. But Twinmotion, Enscape, Lumion, those are some real-time renders that are go try those. V-Ray, I'm sure the chat can help us out. Some of the others, Thea, Maxon. My mind's blanking. There's a lot that will work with SketchUp if you want to try some. Some are less expensive than V-Ray. Some are more. Keyshot is a product renderer that's pretty amazing, and it's more. Anyway, so there's just from the standpoint of I think the distinction between render and modeling, a few people were discussing. So if you have a favorite renderer or one that you're trying out, let us know. So
Tyson, I'm just
gonna
gonna keep going if that's okay, because I want to be I want to make sure we get through this for everyone's benefit. Of course, it's okay if we don't, but I would love to try. We're done with materials. I don't know if you saw what I just did. I just added a scene. I think this is the scene I want to render. And then I also added a scene, and I have to apply my color by tag style to that scene. So the cool thing about that is I don't have to go up to the tags window every time. I can just go color by tag. Sometimes, not always, I will go in and I will open up my scenes panel. And I do not like to use the thumbnails because sometimes they slow things down. I will disable the camera location on my color by tag scene. And the reason for that is because if I'm ever working, and I'm going to add another scene, I'm going to call this working. So if you guys have seen some of the other, excuse me for the clearing of the throat, that's after I got COVID, it's like, now I have to clear my throat constantly. So apologize for that. I know, fun. Anyway, okay, so the reason why I do that is because like when I'm working and I'm modeling, I'll sometimes just go back and double check, especially as I'm adding new entourage elements in. I'll just really quickly, so wherever I am in the model, I can just switch back and forth between this style, which does not have color by tag applied, and this style. So you can see I unlocked it to the camera location, because as I'm working, I'll just kind of maybe toggle that on and on. That way I don't even have to have my tags window showing. I can just leave that, leave that there. So if you're wondering why I did that. Now this one does have the camera location stored, because this is the kind of composition that I want to do. So let's move on. We're kind of done with materials. I'm going to kind of segue here by switching over to this render elements, or this assets. It's called geometry. It's kind of a weird name, but geometry is like assets, like proxies for clipping planes. We're not going to get into all that, but I do want to add an infinite plane, and I'll show you what that does here in just a second. So where is my infinite plane? If you can't find it, you can come over here and you can say select in scene. And then sometimes I go in, where is it? Select in scene. Did it not go?
Is it buried under there
Is it buried
somewhere?
in there? I know. Sometimes it places it like right in the middle, like where your axis is. Crap, excuse me, I can't find it. I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna delete it. We're gonna try that again. Let's go find, I wanna place an infinite plane. And where did it go? Otherwise I have to skip that step, which is gonna be a huge bummer. Oh, you know what I'll do? I'll cheat. I'm just gonna turn everything off. All right. We don't see it though. You don't see it.
It doesn't have anything to do with styles, does it? It should just show up as a rectangle, right?
Yeah, it's a rectangle. Yeah, and if I
Where's
zoom all right.
the axis?
No,
Way off to the
it's
side.
all right. All right, moving right on. You know what I was going to do, and I'll tell you so you can be jealous, and we'll do it next time. Is that I was going to apply a material to an infinite plane. I was going to apply a water texture. So basically, an infinite plane goes all the way to the horizon. It's not geometry, so V-Ray sees it, but SketchUp doesn't. So what you do is you can apply a material to an infinite plane and make it look like this is sitting in the middle of an infinite ocean. I thought that would be a cool effect, but I'm going to have to skip that for now. Maybe we can circle back and try it again at the end. Or I can show you at the end. I'll show you. I have another finished model, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. All right, so that was it then. So I'm going to do geometries, but we're going to wait because I said I want to add more like high poly stuff. Let's do that towards the end because it's going to start to slow down our interactive render. Speaking of which, let's do an interactive render. And this is my render scene. So if I switch back to the render scene. And
now, I was yapping while you created this,
there it is.
But this is one of those things that you emphasize a lot, right? That create your views and your render scenes early on so that you know what you're building towards, right?
Yes, because I think of it like a film set, whereas if we're only going to render one render from this angle, why would I care what's on the backside? And the second thing is that it also is going to help me with lighting. So when I set this view now, when I go to choose my lighting, it's going to make a huge difference because I have reflective materials up here. So if the sun is hitting that or not hitting that, or the shadow is hitting here or hitting there, that's going to make, to me, a huge difference in the overall quality. And I want to turn, sorry, give me 1 second. I forgot to do this earlier. I'm going to turn off scene transitions just because it speeds up. So now I can switch like without the scene transitions. Okay. Now we're going to go into lighting.
Looking pretty awesome.
It's looking pretty good already. So not to
Yes.
toot my own horn, but I will. It's not a lot of work. We haven't done much. We haven't even, this is the default lighting, by the way. We haven't done anything to lighting, and it's starting to already look pretty good. Under your render settings, there's a little setting called material override. You don't have to do this. I tend to do it because it does not only speed up the interactive render, but I'm looking at light only. Like I only want to look at light. So I don't really care about the materials unless it's a reflective material, in which case I may want to say, no. I don't want to see any materials except, like in my case, the glass. So what I'm going to do is come back to my materials. I'm going to find my glass material, and then there's a little setting down here at the bottom under this rollout, under the advanced properties that says can be overridden. So if I uncheck that, you can see here in my render that, I'm going to close this. You can see that I can see my glass now. So for example, if I wanted to see how my lighting is going to affect this lantern, that's actually kind of a cool, I don't know, I think that's a cool tip. So with that, let's go ahead and play with some lighting. Let's go ahead and light this thing. There's two ways to do it. I'm going to leave the interactive render running. I'm going to start by just changing the shadows time of day with SketchUp's default shadow settings. So in this case, what I can do is if I want to say, what does it look like in the afternoon? I can push it that way. What does it look like when the sun's higher in the sky? Oh, you know what? You can see that the sun, I'm going to stop that for 1 second. I think it did not, when I reset the render settings earlier, it did not reset the sun, which is why you were seeing that really big sun, because I actually increased the size of the sun, but that was a goof. That was a goof. All right, let's try that again. Okay, so what you're getting here is you're getting these, by default, you get these really hard shadows. So SketchUp V-Ray just basically says, hey, let's give you these like really nice crisp shadows. So if you wanted to adjust the lighting setting, you can start by just moving the time of day or adjusting the year and saying, okay, well, let's let, that's fine with me. I don't need like specialty lighting or anything like that. Like for me, I'm thinking maybe the light's coming in from the right. So let's start by seeing, is that the afternoon or is that the morning? I think that's the morning, right? And then what I want to do is if you zoom in here, if I zoom in a little bit, I love what makes your rendering look really good, not just the quality of the light, but also the direction of the light, is because the light is revealing all this great geometry work that Aaron and Tyson did. I mean, look at the way the light is hitting and the highlights are hitting the top of the stones and the shadows are being cast down. I'm gonna stop talking in case there's any questions for a second. So I'll just kind of let that gel and say, hey, that's looking pretty good.
No, man, it's looking great. Keep going.
All right.
By all means.
The reason why
that override materials setting, if people haven't used it, not just for lighting, but I think showing where that is again, that's just a really helpful, like,
yeah,
overall.
In the V-Ray asset editor, it's in your main settings, your main render settings under, and then at the bottom under material override. And you can actually change the color of that. Like if I wanted it to be all like a dark gray, you can change that. And the reason why it's this default gray, and I'll show you instead of white, because if you render in white, you'll see in just a second, you can see that it just blows the whole model out because V-Ray doesn't like light hitting white surfaces. So even when if it's a good tip, if you're doing interior design or something, you may want to actually make your wall color not pure white, kind of like an off-white or a light gray or something like that. So little fun fact. If you don't like those crisp shadows, you can change it. Basically, if you go to the sun setting, the light settings in your V-Ray box, under the sunlight, which the only lights we have in our model right now are the default sun, you can actually change it by pushing the size up. So I did like, you saw that I did it like 100. If I push that to like, maybe not even 100, let's just say 20. And if I do that same, you can see what happened in my render. Did you see that? It was subtle. The shadows aren't crisp anymore. Maybe you look at the ground. Do you see that? Do you see how the shadows have this ghosting, this kind of soft edge? That has to do with the size of my sun. So if you don't like that really hard, crisp shadow edge, you can go ahead and just make your sun a little bit bigger. I'm going to override the sun anyway, like right now. So I'm just going to turn that off, and we're going to look for generating light a different way.
But that's a great tip. If you're coming and just want to use a quick render with the SketchUp default sun, yeah, just being able to change that sun size to get your soft shadows, that's a great tip.
Yeah, hang on, I'll take a sip of water. So anyway,
show like HDRIs and stuff more advanced.
But let's say here, this is great. Default sun is pretty much great for just daytime settings, just a generic sunny, bright day. It's great. But what I want to do is actually add what's called a dome light, because you'll notice that there's no clouds, right? I mean, there's no, I don't know, it just feels, I don't know, kind of fake. So let's see if we can get something a little more realistic. You can start by adding a dome light here. It's in your light settings. So if you don't have that by default, you can go to View, Tool Palettes, V-Ray, Lights. So in the light setting, you can grab a dome light. I'm going to set it right there. I'm setting it there, and I'll show you why in a second. I'm not setting it outside of my camera view because I actually want to make some adjustments, and I need to be able to know where that is. So I'm going to set that right there. Now let's go ahead and do that render again, where the sunlight has been turned off and the dome light is turned on. So now the dome light is an HDRI. Now, if I wanted to adjust it, you'll notice my light is coming from the wrong side. Remember how I liked it coming from the other side? So if I rotate my dome light and say 180 degrees, what happened? Nothing happened. So it's because you actually have to, I wish this was almost like they turned this on by default as well. It kind of bugs me to have to do this every time, but use transform. Use transform means that if you rotate the dome light in your model, it's going to actually rotate the HDRI that's attached to it. So I'll show you one more time again. I'm going to go ahead and select this. I'm going to switch to my rotate tool, and I'm going to turn it, let's say 45 degrees. And if you just are watching the render setting, it just changed the direction of that light. Pretty cool. I'm not thrilled with the quality of this light, to be honest with you. I don't know how you all feel, but think we can do better. Should we try to do better? Can't see it. I'm asking Tyson to speak for the group. Should we?
You're the self-proclaimed OCD one here, so if you're not thrilled, you should fix it.
I don't do it for
You'll be an unhappy camper.
I do it for y'all, so whatever y'all want. Okay, so I didn't show what I was doing. So when I said let's generate some different light properties, we're actually going to do this thing, which is really cool. It's a relatively new feature in V-Ray called Light Gen. So it will generate HDRI skies for us, and it's going to generate a bunch of varieties. We could do interior if we were doing an interior rendering, and there's a ton of videos on these again, so I'm not going to go into any detail. You can basically look up Light Gen if you want. I'm going to switch to HDR, which is kind of short for HDRI, and it's asking me how many variations I want to create. I actually want to create three styles, maybe 5 styles and 3 variations. It's going to give me 15. It's basically going to give me 15 HDRIs to choose from. Actually, I'm going to do 2. I don't want to load that. I mean, it's going to take a few minutes. So you can see it says generate. Oh, it won't let me. Okay, so I have to generate 15. I'm going to generate 15 different skies. It's going to take a couple minutes because it's actually calculating. It's moving the sun. It's moving the clouds. It's moving the time of year, the azimuth angle, and it's going in and it's doing all these calculations, and it's saving them to an HDRI. So we get to basically look at these and say,
was LightGen one of the version 5? I mean, that's such a cool thing that it's just giving you all these options.
It wasn't in the first rollout in 5. It came later. I don't know if it came on at the same time as Cosmos came out or if it came first, but I know that once they did that, I was like, whoa, this is pretty sweet. So what's cool about this is that if I bump up my interactive render, these are just like little preview tiles. So if I want to click this first one, I don't even have to load it into my model. It auto sends it to V-Ray. And then it's only going to let me, it's only going to store the one that I want to keep. So I can actually just click on a few of these and I can say, oh, do I like that? And don't forget, I can rotate it myself too. Do I like this one? You know, I mean, I like all of them, to be honest, but I'm actually going to stop that. I'm not going to use any of these. You want to know why? Because I did this yesterday where I generated 30 different ones and I saved it to a file. So I actually want to, instead, I want to come back into LightGen. I want to reset. I want to get out of those. And instead, I'm going to load a preset, which is here I saved, called under presets. So I saved all the 30 LightGens that I did yesterday, and I really liked them. So I'm actually going to go ahead and load those now. And if it works, because so you'll notice when I did the LightGen, I did it, I was looking at the lighthouse because that was where I was really focusing on. So now I can do this is really important because lighting is just so important. I mean, from everything else is going to be affected or impacted by our choice at this step. So I'm going to click on this one here and see if that was the one. I think the one I was playing around with yesterday. I could be wrong. I think it's this one right here. I really liked the fact that the sun is going down, but you still see blue in the sky. That the fact that you get the warm, almost like what you call, not quite blue hour, but you're getting that sort of those warm colors. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and just basically use that one. So when I click this one, what it does, if it comes over here and it creates a new dome light called LightGen, and then if I switch to a different one, it's going to keep this one and it'll keep it. So if you want to have more than one light, excuse me, LightGen dome light, that's hard to say. It's like a tongue twister. You can go ahead and say that 10 times fast. LightGen dome light. You can duplicate it. And then what you can do is from then you can have multiple in your model. But in this case, I'm just going to go with the one. I'm actually happy with this one, so I'm going to go with that one. I'm going to close out of LightGen. It already remembers it. I'm going to save, right? Where's Matt? Save when you need him.
Exactly.
And then the only thing I'm going to do from here is save, is I need to find that dome light, that LightGen dome light. And I hope I don't have the same problem that I just had when I was trying to find where it put it, because, there it is. See, it wants to put it at like the model's origin. So just keep in mind that if your model is like way off in outer space and you import like a dome light, you might not know where it is. So the reason why I'm putting that there is because I'm going to rotate it the same way I just did this with the other one. Is everyone still, do we still have people watching?
There are three people left.
Three
you,
people
me, and
left.
Aaron.
All right.
So, no, man, there's a lot of.
Sorry, guys. Sorry, everyone. That I'm doing my best here. Okay, so
I didn't want to tell you, but there was one reference to like, hey, if you can move the sun in the sky, it's kind of God level. So you're pulling out some. But I'm like, we don't need to feed Eric's ego, people. Please don't.
No, please do. I'm playing around with the. You'll notice that I've rotated this and I'm just changing the angle. So I'm kind of moving it in like 5 to 10 degree increments until I feel like I have the light hitting the front of the building. So if you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm just kind of nudging the light over to the right. So I think I'm at like 120 degrees, and I'll stop here in just a second. I think this is it. I think that's good. This is what I wanted. I wanted the light to come from the right. Okay. So I'm going to stop there. I think that's good enough. And then here's what I'm going to do. Now that I have my light gen in, I'm going to, first of all, I don't need to do this, but you don't have to use light gen. If you downloaded an HDRI from the internet and you really like that, you can use that instead. You can actually go to your dome light and you can click on this little blue box. That's where it brings up the link. And you can see that right now it's pathing to the default dome light. You can then just select a new dome light. So I don't need to do that because I really like the light gen sky. But if you found one online and it has to be this like starry night sky or something, that's how you do it. You basically path to it and you replace the default dome light. So then you don't even need the light gen at all. Trying to stay high level.
Yeah. Options.
Save.
So many.
Save.
Options.
Okay, so it's looking okay. One thing that I said you can do, I tend not to play too much around with this, but you can increase the brightness or decrease the brightness of the dome light itself. So if I wanted it to go like 10, I'm going to bump. You can see I bumped it way up. That's too much. I could try 2 and make it a little bit brighter if you think that looks okay. Maybe that looks better. Maybe I'll leave that.
All right, late afternoon.
Yeah. The reason why I don't do that too much is I don't worry about it is because we're at the end of this process, we're going to go pop into our little corrections tab. I'm kind of staying out of that. In fact, I'm going to delete everything that I did that might have accidentally been showing this whole time. This is why you're not supposed to do this more than once. Okay, you want to make sure that you don't have any corrections, right? Because what it's going to do is now I want to use the corrections. I'm going to use the corrections at the end to sort of bring that brightness and stuff up. So I'm okay if it doesn't look perfect right now. We're going to dial it in at the very end. That's lighting. Oh, you know what?
That's Matt's favorite saying. Fix it in post.
Fix it in post. Fix it in post. He says fix it in pre, which I like better. I'm kidding. That's what he said.
I think either way is a sarcastic reference to people who think you can fix everything.
Now,
anyway, carry on.
You guys tell me. I think that it'd be fun for this demo to put a couple of artificial lights in. The lighting that we've been talking about this whole time is environmental lighting. So it's all the light that comes from outside. But if you're doing an interiors or a night shot, then you're pretty much maybe not caring so much about the environmental lighting. You're going to be relying heavily on artificial lights. I'm going to keep this super simple. I'm only going to add 2 lights, and I'm going to copy them. I'm going to come in here.
But that's a heavy yes from the community.
Artificial lights.
Speaking on behalf of the community. Yes.
Yeah.
Throw those in there.
Okay. I'm going to start with a sphere light, and the reason why I use a sphere light is because to me it's like the most versatile. Somebody might say, no, I would use a spot for that, or I'd use an omni. And to be honest with you, that's perfectly fine. To me, there's no right or wrong. Somebody might say, yes, there is a right or wrong. That's not right. But to me, there's no right or wrong. I think if a sphere works for me, that's what I'm going to use. So what I did here is one thing is when you go into your lights panel, if you add a sphere light, it shows up. And because I'm OCD, I'm going to change this to lantern bulbs. I'm changing the name of it. You're going to see why later, but basically every time you add lights, if you have the time to name them, that would be great. The second thing I'm going to do is copy this.
Naming.
Who does that anymore?
Who does that?
Who does that? I want to zoom out really quick because I want to show you. I'm going to place this. Luckily, and I'm going to give props. I love giving more and more props to Aaron and Tyson. They thought ahead and they made this lantern a component. This is going to save me some energy because I'm going to go ahead and I have a shortcut key, but I'm going to use paste in place. So that sphere light, I'm just going to paste it in inside of one component, and now it's going to show up in all of them. So that's really helpful for me. I don't have to place. So if you have 100 lamps, you just place it into one component. I'm going to use the same one though. I'm actually going to place it here. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to zoom that. Where's a space mouse when you need one? Aaron's probably in the chat going, it's killing me watching you scroll in and out constantly. Too bad, Aaron. It's my show. I'm going to scroll wheel it. Okay, so I'm going to place one in here. I'm just going to kind of hide it. I just really want there to be kind of like an ambient glow coming from there. I don't necessarily need to see it. That's not the point. So now let's go ahead and see what that looks like. I'm going to run a test render again. This is also a good opportunity. If you'll notice in my test render, I'm only looking at these lamps. I don't need to render my whole scene. If you're finding that it's kind of chugging along and it's kind of eating up your processor, you can do a render region. So I'm actually just going to render region just that. What that does is it means that everything outside of that box is not being rendered right now. So that should speed up the processor a little bit. So when I go into my light settings, I'm going to click on my lantern bulb. I'm going to bump the brightness up. I'm going to try like 500. I don't know if it needs it. It's probably too much, but I don't know how else to say what number to put in here other than the fact that when you do it enough times, you kind of know what works and what doesn't. It's kind of like salt when you're cooking. You kind of know how much salt you should put in, if it needs it or not. So if you hear me make a Julia Childs reference or a Gordon Ramsay reference, it's because it feels to me I'm kind of like, it's a recipe and I'm just kind of playing around at this point. So this little box here, that represents the color. I do want this kind of warmish glow because it's the sunset. One thing that you can see here, and I'm going to actually bring my render region in a little tighter. I just want to render just one of these for a minute, is that you can see the light itself. Oftentimes, I don't ever want to see the light unless it's acting like a light bulb. Like in this case, maybe it's okay. But you can actually, more often than not, I'm going to disable the light by seeing the light itself, by making it invisible. And I'm seeing the source of the light. So in this way, the source of the light is hitting the lantern and it's reflecting off the metal and it's less intense. So can I do that again? I'm going to do that again. I turn that on. I'm seeing the light. It's a little intense, a little too much. Make it invisible, and I'm just getting the sort of glow. It's kind of cool.
We're getting some exact Kelvin number suggestions out here. You're cooking with salt and stuff, and people are like, oh yeah, no.
When I say cooking, I'm reading the box, the back of the box of the mac and cheese that tells me how much water to boil with the pasta. So that's when I say cooking, that's as far as it goes. Cool. I want to add one more artificial light, and then we're going to have some fun with, what's our next step?
Let's see, you got your lie, you got your...
I brought a cheat sheet. I brought a cheat sheet in here, so you'll have to forgive me if that bugs you. But I put this cheat sheet in. So we're under lighting, dome light, we did. Light gen, we did. Artificial lights, we're doing. I'm going to do an ambient light. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. That's a fun one, but that's optional. Okay. Oh, I know what we're going to do. Okay. We are going to, turn my watermark off. We are going to add one more light. And what's cool about this is that if you already have a light in your model and you've already got the settings in, you can just grab this light. I want to cast some light. You can see it's a little dark on these rocks. And I kind of want to pretend like maybe there's some light bouncing that's kind of coming in and it's sort of illuminating this sort of dark spot here. So I'm going to make this sphere light bigger. And I'm going to kind of lift it up, and I'm going to kind of move it into the background a little bit. Now, that sphere light's exactly the same as the other ones because I just copied the ones we already have. So in this case, I'm going to treat it like a component. It is a component. I'm going to say make unique. So by making that one unique, now if I go into my lights tab, you can see I have 2 lantern bulbs. I have the ones I've already done, and then I've got this number 1. So this number 1 is a copy that I just made. So in this case, I'm going to change the name so I don't get confused to ambient light. And of course, if I had more than one ambient light, I might say ambient blue, or I might say ambient, neon sign, or street light, or something like that. But I think for this one, I'm just going to call that ambient light. So let's render that. Actually, what I'm going to do, hang on, I'm going to darken my dome light. You know how I bumped it up to 2? I'm actually going to bring that back down to 1 again. And the reason for doing that, it's going to make these lights pop just a little bit more. I'm going to leave that at its default intensity. So let's render that whole thing. I've darkened it a little bit, and you can see I've got some light coming in. That's my ambient light. That is this guy here. So in this case, it's kind of fun because now I've separated this light from the other one. So I can do 2 things. I can change the color. So if I wanted to bring in a different color, make that more red, moody, pink, groovy.
Let's make this a rave. Ooh, yeah.
Rave. Oh. Yeah, where's my pacifier? Oh, that's gonna make it hard for me to talk.
This is the artistry. Everybody, this is great to watch. So carry on. I don't mean to interrupt. This is the artistry of really. It's not a purely photorealistic, what would exactly look like. It is an illustration with extra lights and extra colors that make it look really remarkable. It's awesome.
And that's a great comment because when people say, because I was thinking this in my head this morning, they say, well, why go through this effort? We have other programs, and I won't name them, and I won't pick on them because you can watch the Donuts and Debate episode where I got to defend old school rendering. This is what I'm doing now. Versus real-time rendering where you can just kind of click and it sort of does. It's a game engine. It's all just perfect and it's right there. It's all one click. I think of it and I'm going to pick on not the programs, but the process, because to me, it's like color paint by numbers. It's like if you just click a button, that is great as an iterative process to just cook off something to send to your client. But to me, it's but you're going to get a lot of similar results because you didn't go in and you didn't play with these settings. You didn't put that light there, To me, this is like a painting. This is your brushstroke. That light, that's like you pushing that brushstroke a little harder than my brushstroke, where it's a little softer. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Is I am painting a painting with oil paints on canvas, and everybody else, is following this. Not everybody else. Sorry. Other ways to do it feel like using a color by numbers. So this is, I love that term though. It feels like. It is. It's like painting. It's revealing itself as we go. So yeah, thanks. I want to show now that excuse me, take a break. Now that we've got some lights in our model, it's a good time to kind of relook at some of our settings, and we're thinking ahead here, right? So in this case, what I want to do is you can add some render channels, and one of them is called Light Mix. What Light Mix does, and I'm going to add it, and I'm going to add another one. So this is, the render channels are basically when I do my final render, it's going to give me a bunch of tools. It's like separating out, kind of like the PBR materials. It's going to separate out the render into channels that I can then edit. Another one I want to do is add material random color. And that's going to basically be, for me, a matte ID. So it's going to be V-Ray's version of what I call my CBT. So my CBT allows me, if I go to Photoshop and I just want to select just the wood, I can just use the magic wand and select the wood, which if we have time, I'll show you how that works. And so you want a material ID layer. So what I did is I added light mix and I added material random color. And then because we're sort of moving into final rendering, we've got the light and we're going to go into compositing here in just a minute. I'm also going to take a second too to go into, again, I try not to go into any of the deep settings if I can avoid it. But there's one that I found that's interesting under camera, effects, vignetting. So vignetting, as you know, it's vignetting, but it's adds a vignette. I could do that in Photoshop if I wanted to, but as Matt says, fix it in pre. We're going to do that. We're going to do that right here. I'm going to show you what that looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and switch off of my interactive for just 1 second because I want those render channels to come in almost as if I'm going to do my final render. So I'm going to turn interactive off just for this moment. Turn progressive off. And for me, I don't care about the quality. I'll just leave it as low because I just want to do this really fast. I just want to show you. So this is a static render. So you'll notice if I move the model while it's rendering, it's not updating to follow. It's fixed on this particular view.
That is pretty.
It is pretty. It's pretty. It's getting there. Sorry, I just turned my brightness up so I can make sure that if I'm going to do compositing, I want to make sure that I can see what I'm doing. So what it does is it added this thing called light mix, number one. I'm going to show you that in just a second. And it added up here under this drop down, these are all of your channels that you can export separately from your render. So here's my material random ID. What's nice about this is I don't have to go in and export a color by tag channel or export straight from SketchUp. V-Ray will do that, will now include that automatically. And so you can imagine how much faster, like if I felt like my trees didn't like the color of the trees, I can just quick select those and then in Photoshop just adjust the hue saturation. Really awesome. And then the other thing I want to show you is here's the light mix. The light mix is really, really, really cool. Light mix is also a new feature that was added along with light gen. So it's kind of confusing because light mix, light gen, you got to keep them straight in your head. So if my light mix is turned on, if I go to my effects result, you can see my light mix is turned on. I can control every single one of these lights independently. I'm going to turn my light dome off, my light gen dome light off. And now what I'm seeing is I'm seeing just my artificial lights. And if I wanted to turn the ambient light off, I can toggle that off separately. Or even more fun, if I didn't like for some reason the brightness, like maybe it was not bright enough, I could come back in here and push that up after I've rendered. So what's cool about this is you don't have to have it perfect while you're rendering. It doesn't matter if the render takes 10 hours. You can still go back and make those changes. You don't have to go back and be like, oh crap, that color was wrong. I need to fix that. So in this case, I can change both the intensity, and if I didn't like that reddish color, I wanted more of a blue hue in there. You can see I've got sort of this purplish blue hue. Tyson, did you have any comments on that? Was that helpful? I feel like that's cool.
Yeah, no, I think that is.
I feel like that's cool.
There was a question or a comment about the infinite plane that we couldn't find earlier.
You know what? Hang on. Let me try something. Go ahead, Tyson. Finish that thought.
I was going to make a quick comment while you were here that, I mean, you made the side comment that, yeah, you could do it in Photoshop, but I from other conversations, I don't think you take almost any renders to Photoshop anymore. And again, that's just kind of the last update or two of V-Ray added all of these post-production tools that's pretty cool. You can do it all here. And post-production is not, you taught me this. It's not cheating. It's not like you're kind of squirming your way out of not being able to render well. Post-production is part of every great render you've ever seen. It is part of the process. Now you can tell me, Eric, if that's wrong, because I learned that from you.
You're right. You said two things, and they kind of contradict, but you're both right. Is that number one is yes, I do less and less post processing in Photoshop because the tools now, especially we're going to get into it in just a few minutes. The corrections that you can do here, they almost mirror Photoshop, meaning the way that you can overlay properties, the way that you can adjust transparency sliders, you can boost contrast. You can do that here. So that is pretty much most of what I do when I go into Photoshop, unless you're doing something really stylized and you need to like magic wand something. Because what you can't do yet is you can't isolate. You can't go use a magic wand and say, I want to take that tree and I want to move that tree, or I want to, make that tree black and white. You can't isolate objects yet in V-Ray.
Sure.
But if you're applying color corrections to the uniformly across the entire rendering, absolutely, you can do pretty much everything now. And but post-production is just like painting. I mean, get your paints up, you prep your canvas, you start laying your base wash on top, you go in the details, and then at the very end, of course, you add your signature, you put the little highlight, the gauze, some highlights on it or whatever. So yeah, definitely, it's still part of the process. So to be mindful of time, I would like to do, I think we have time. I would like to switch these stylized trees out for more photorealistic trees. And I think that gives me an opportunity. I have two more things that I would like to do if we have time. I would like to bring some more assets in from the Chaos Cosmos browser. And I would love to see what this looks like if I take these sort of low poly cartoony trees and swap them out and see if I can get something a little bit more realistic, even though the original idea of this model was to be a sort of low poly stylized model. So if we could do those two things, and the third thing would be, the last thing would be to sort of tweak some of the color corrections in the VFB. The VFB, by the way, is the frame buffer. So if I say VFB, I mean that it's the render preview window. So
now you should do it. You should show this, but since I created those trees, I'm trying very hard not to take it personally as a massive affront that you are so eager to swap out my beautiful low poly trees. Yeah. I'm going to go over in the corner and sulk for a little bit, but you carry on.
Okay. I'll just say for the record that it has nothing to do with the quality of the modeling or the actual look of the trees. It's just that I want something a little more realistic. So please do not take any offense. We're very sensitive on this group, if you didn't know that. Like, Tyson said he was going to give me a hard time. He was going to pick on me during this live session. And I said, please don't, because I don't want to cry on camera. Okay. So I want to go to my tool palettes because I do want to bring up an extension, and I'm going to show this in two different ways. So just hang with me. Is that this is an extension that has photorealistic trees, and it's called LabWork. So anyone who's rendered with V-Ray or SketchUp before is probably familiar with this. And this is, of course, they came out before Chaos Cosmos browser. So some people say, well, I don't need those anymore. You have Chaos Cosmos. That's true. I'm used to working with these LabWork trees. I invested in them, so I feel like I like them. Again, I'm not being paid to plug them. It works. It's just really easy. So what I want to do is I want to find my linden that I was working with the other day that I really like. So I just type in linden, and it's going to show me that I have two lindens to work with. I'm going to grab one of those, pop it in. You'll notice I'm not actually doing a render at this point. I've stopped it because when you're doing really complex tasks, like I said in the beginning, it's a good idea to go ahead and stop that render and then kickstart it again once you're ready. So I'm going to do two versions of this tree because I noticed that Tyson, to his props, he did two versions of his low poly tree. So I'm going to make one of them unique. I have right now, it's just a copy of the same tree. Actually, I'm going to delete that. The first thing I'm going to do is go into its attributes. I'm going to make this low quality. Don't worry about what I'm doing. I'm just doing this to speed the process up. So when I do my render, it just doesn't take so long. So I'm reducing the leaf density, I'm reducing the leaf quantity, and I'm reducing the PBR material quality so that when I do this test render, it just goes a little bit faster. So you don't have to, you can ignore them. If you don't do that at home, don't worry about it. So I'm going to make that unique, and then I'm going to switch the variety of that tree. I'm going to switch that from variety number 1 middle-aged to variety number 3 middle-aged. So what I should get, if this worked properly, which it did, what I have now is two of these trees, which if you've heard the term, if you're familiar with rendering, you've heard the term proxy. Proxy just means placeholder. So these trees are actually being loaded in from my hard drive. But in SketchUp, it's giving you a pretty good approximation of what that looks like. So what I'm going to do is pop into this first one here. I'm going to group Tyson's tree because I may change my mind. And I'm going to come over here. I'm going to place my new tree, and I'm going to scale it so that it's somewhat in line with the scale of the tree that Tyson was using. I'm going to do that again. Actually, sorry, before I do that, you'll notice, wait, that's funny. You're like, wait, you went into the component and you replaced it. Why did you do that? maybe that's not what you asked, but that's what I might think you're asking. So I did that because number one is that it replaced all the components by going inside of the component and placing this photorealistic tree. It now applied it to all of them, including the scale and rotation that Tyson did. And the second thing it does is it allows me then to create two new tags. I'm basically going to create two new tags. You don't have to do this, totally optional. I'm going to do tree LP, I'm going to do, out of respect, TK for Tyson. And I'm going to create another tag. See, you thought I was going to S tree, and I'm going to do LW. And LW stands for lab book because they're German, so it's book with a V. And then when I'm in this component, the cool thing about this is I can go, switching to my color by tag mode again, I can add the photorealistic tree to the tag tree lab work. And I can add Tyson's beautiful tree that I do not want to get rid of. I'm going to add it to another tag called tree TK. And I'm going to...
You can get rid of it.
No. Now I'm just going to, the whole rest of this time, I'm going to sing the praise of this tree until this session is done. See, you brought it up. So, okay. So now what I'm going to do is do the exact same thing. I'm going to take this tree, which is my other variety, and I'm going to repeat that process for you. Don't worry. It goes pretty quick. Group it. Assign that to TK. Paste that component, that lab work one that I just copied. I'm going to paste that in. And if I need to, sort of adjust where it's placed. And of course, I already tagged it. So now it's kind of cool because in a way, it's like I have three tags. I have all the trees, which I can toggle all of them on and off. And then inside of those, I can toggle them independently. And because just for fun, because I think it's cool, when you do X-ray mode, you can see almost looks like a little snow globes. I don't know. It's kind of cool.
That was the original intent with this.
Okay.
The whole little snow globe scene.
So here's the only problem with this is I have to remember to turn off the TKs and I have to update my render scene. Now, if I want to see what it looks like, let's see what it looks like with both. And I'm going to let maybe the jury, where's Matt with his polls? Maybe you guys can tell me which one we should move forward with. I'm going to kickstart a render. We're going to grab an
use your trees.
Use my trees. Okay. So we're going to kickstart an interactive render. It's they're a little dark, I'll admit. So let's just pop into our light settings where we can just maybe bump the intensity back up a little bit. And I'm going to do a few more corrections. But again, it's just kind of, like I said, it's salt to taste. We got to decide if we like that or not. Kind of cool. Kind of cool. And then this is also where I would say that, well, wait a minute. This is like really prominent tree. This is where you get to have some fun. I'm going to take this tree and I'm going to move it up. And I'm going to move the trunk. Well, sorry. It's kind of hard sometimes when you're like I'm wanting to preserve the, I want to move this tree off to the side, and then I want to scale it so that I'm getting, no, that's okay. I'm going to rotate it though, maybe 45. It's hard when you're doing stuff and you're kind of like trying to do it off camera. You know, you're like, we get it. Sometimes you have to use, for me, like you have to use the arrow keys and hope that you're moving it in the right direction. All right, I'm taking too much time with this. I'm going to do this instead. I'm just going to scale it up. And then I'm going to go back to my scene. There we go. And I'm just going to move it off to the side. You get the idea. I basically just want to stop your eye from kind of going off that edge. And then I want to move. So again, you can do this. I'm just kind of trying to figure out like I'm moving the trees based on the composition. So I want to leave a little view corridor out to what is supposed to be my water. Speaking of water, I'm going to cheat. Don't tell anyone.
We cheat all the time here.
Don't tell everybody's watching. I was like, don't tell anyone. But I'm going to try cheating, and I'm going to pop over to this finished model. And I'm going to see where I'm going to try and find my infinite plane from that model. I'm going to grab it, and I'm going to see if it'll let me paste it. There it is. Wait, did it disappear? There. Okay. So now I'm going to go over here and see I have two infinite planes. So select objects in scene, not that one. Nope, it was that one. Oh no, oh no, oh no. There we go. Okay, so what's cool about the infinite plane, what I was trying to show, and I was trying to do this with the materials, is that you can actually apply material to the infinite plane. So if this worked right, I'm actually going to grab a liquid material, which is my waves, and I'm going to drag my waves over into my materials section. You can see that there's some pretty waves. And I'm going to apply that to I'm going to apply it to the selection. So first thing I need to do is select the infinite plane. This is why we don't do these live renders, right? Because you're like, all right,
What are you talking about, man?
We're getting into the weeds. Getting in the weeds a little bit.
Yeah. How do you do rendering and not get in the weeds a little bit? It's the weeds.
All right, so I'm going to turn my trees off for this.
Look at that.
Okay, because what I wanted to do was it worked. I had to go around about way to get it. But what it does is it applies that water, like I said, infinitely all the way to the horizon. And what's really cool about this too is that it's associated with this plane. So if I wanted to move this infinite plane and I wanted to move it down, I'll lock it to the blue axis. I'll move it down, let's say by 1 foot. Look at my VFB. You're going to see my water level is dropping. Move it down by 2 feet, down by 4 feet, down by 6 feet. And then by the time I get to 6 feet, I'll just go back to 4 feet. By the time I get to 6 feet, you're going to see that I'm actually below like my little cliff face here. And I think that's pretty cool. So the fact that I want to wrap up pretty soon, there was a couple of things I forgot to do. I forgot to apply a bump map to those materials that I brought in from outside. So if we want to do that, we can do that. We also want to, I'm hoping to go into Chaos Cosmos so we can grab some more photorealistic entourage that we might be able to populate our scene. And then the last thing, and maybe I'll let my group, our friends, pick. The other thing we could do if we have time is I can apply the fur setting, which is basically going to scatter grass along the surface of our ground and create sort of a much more dynamic look and feel. Do we think we have time for grass and Cosmos? That'd be cool.
If you throw, are you planning to throw some fur on the ground plane essentially?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would start there, and then if we have time, bring in something else.
Yeah. Otherwise, I can. Yeah. Okay.
All right. We'll. I hope, and please chime in. I think a lot of people really enjoyed seeing how you went through the thought process, how you have, it looks great. So yeah, this shouldn't be our last rendering one. We're looking forward to trying some different models and going through this again. So if we don't get on everything, that is okay.
Oh yeah, this is our first one, not our last one. Okay, so first thing is in Chaos Cosmos is relatively new as well. Like if you click on this little thing that looks like a paint palette, it's Cosmos and it's their built-in library. So that's why I was saying that I'm used to using these lab work trees because that's what I used to use before Cosmos. But now, of course, if you wanted to, you could just click on vegetation and you could find a tree or you could search for a birch. And then here's the tree that I've already downloaded. So I just click this button. And what it's going to do, it's going to do exactly the same thing. If you're familiar with Enscape, it's a proxy. And then when I render this, it's going to render photorealistic. So I just wanted to show that. So if you don't have these lab work trees, you don't want to buy them or whatever, you can. But there's pros and cons to both. So I won't go into that. I'll leave that debate for the comments. I will type in, I do want to add, oh, you said we were going to do fur first. I'm sorry, I went out of order. So I am going to do Cosmos first, and then we're going to add fur in just a second. This will only take a second. I just want to add one thing. I want to add a scooter because somebody had to get here somehow. Oh, there's no scooters? Okay. So just to give you like a really quick overview of Cosmos, and I'm not going to go into it because, again, we're going to do this later. You actually can get HDRIs. They just added materials. So if you want a material that is not in, let's see here. So if you're looking for material that is not in V-Ray's default library, you can just download it and import it. So that's kind of cool. That's a new thing. So basically furniture assets, vehicle assets. Here's the one that I wanted. It's actually kind of like the sidecar, but I'm going to go with this one. I just feel like whenever I do these models, reminds me of this Dow Chemical commercial, which by the way, I hate to reference, but I am, is that they've got this great commercial that shows these natural spaces, and there's always like one thing that shows that people were there, but like in a good way, like a boat, you know, on a sandy beach, and their theme is the human element. And when I do these renders, I kind of think about these little things that remind people that, you know, this is a place for people to come to or enjoy, or maybe somebody just showed up to meet his friend and they're having dinner or something like that. I don't know how many
I'm sure
times
they didn't have a Spitfire in that library. I mean, I know where we can get a stellar one.
You know what you got to do is offer
Missing
to
some
sell.
wings.
Offer to sell it to them, maybe make some money on the side. Okay, so that we're going to see what that looks like in a, well, I'll see what it looks like right now. Let's just go ahead and render that.
Eric.
Okay, there he is.
There's been repeated questions. Where's your cap? What's with this other hat?
I don't know, folks.
How do we know it's even you?
That's right. Actually, you know what? I do have an identical twin brother, so it could not be me. It'd be really weird if he's a photographer, so if he knew as much as I did about SketchUp, it would be like, I'd be impressed. I'd be, whoa. All right, I want to wrap up. I want to add some grass. We're going to tweak some colors. We're going to call it a day. We're so close. If everyone's still with me, I think we could do it in 10 minutes, and then leave a couple of minutes to just hang out and chit chat. So let's do it. Let's do some fur. There's so many things that we could go into, that we could dive into. So it's almost like the harder part about this is actually not showing everything. So what I'm going to do is I want to select my ground plane. In this case, I'm going to select just the top, and I grouped it because I want to apply only the fur to this top, the green part, not the brown. So I'm going to come down here to my objects. So if you go View, Tool Palettes, V-Ray Objects, that one, you'll see this little thing that looks like grass, like a little hairy circle. Click that one, and then you know that fur is applied to something because you can see that the fur icon shows up. So that's one way to know that there's fur applied to that object. So I'm going to go ahead and press render. Like I said, every time I do something, I do it, press render, see if I like it. By the way, if anyone's wondering, I am on an iMac Pro 2017. It's 10 cores. It's got 32 gigabytes of RAM. It's pretty fast. You know, I don't know how it compares to the M1s, but it does a pretty good job. So if you're seeing, like, if it kicks in, hopefully it feels like it's doing a good job. I feel like it works okay for me. This grass, I just added grass. You can't really see it. I don't know about you, but it's a little hard to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to render just a region. And we're going to go in and we're going to change those settings just a little bit. Because otherwise, I think like a lot of things, is that it works if you just do the default, but it works better if you play around with it. I want 10-inch high grass, first of all. Oh, I'm getting a call. Hang on one second. I got to say 10 minutes. 10 minutes. That's embarrassing. Okay, so here I just made it taller. So if you look at where the wheels are, you'll notice that the grass is taller. The other thing is I can make it thicker. So 0.5. I can change the bend and have less bend, 0.75. So it's more like straight up. I can apply global scale stuff to it. Hang on, let me wait. I'm going to wait till it sort of catches up. One thing you can do, one thing I'm seeing here is I'm seeing the grass applied. You can see it with the wheel. But what I'm seeing that it's the color itself makes it kind of hard to tell that that's grass. So one thing I want to do is I want to show you a really cool trick. What I'm going to do is override. Right now, by default, fur picks up the color of whatever's underneath. So right now, it's picking up the color from the ground plane. But if I go into my fur settings and I come down here to what's called material, First thing I need to do is bring a material into my model. I actually have one right here. It's this weird seamless kind of texture color. Explode that, group it, hide it. It's it. Oh, what did I just do? No, 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 no.
Oh,
Hide the image, not hide my model. That material is now in my model. So what I can do is click on where it says material override. I'm going to override that grass material, and I'm going to pick the one that's called grass override. See, I was already thinking ahead, so I named it. Now you can't see it here. It doesn't preview it. But if I go back in here and I press my interactive render, let's see what it does. It worked. You can see I've got this like
ooh.
wavy grass. It's bright green. I can see the blades better. Remember, I'm doing a really low res preview. So of course, if I bump this up to high res, you're going to see those grass blades. I'm only at 900 pixels. But I think at 900 pixels, it's starting to read pretty well.
Yeah, yeah, a lot more.
So that's it. I'm going to render as we're talking. If you want to banter for a minute, I'm going to press a render. It's going to take only a couple minutes. I want to switch from interactive to static because I'm done. I don't have anything else to share right now for this. I'm just going to cook off a higher quality render and render output. I'm going to change that to say 1500 pixels. I'm going to bump that up a little bit, and just so you can see that it doesn't. No, I'll go 2000. It's not going to take more than a couple minutes. And then I'm going to go ahead and press static render. I'm trying to think. Did I mess anything? Okay. Oh my gosh, there's so many fun things you can do with it, which I really enjoy. But there's also, as you imagine, there's a lot of things that can kind of go wrong too. Oh, I forgot to turn this back on. Oh, I forgot to recalibrate the setting. So let's see. Let's pull back. Let's let that go. I don't think that's going to take more than a couple minutes. If anyone has anything they'd like to share, if there's any questions.
I don't know, but stretch that window out a little bit larger across your screen now that we don't need your settings.
Sorry. Oh, yeah. So if you see, that's a good point. If you see that it turns red around the boundary, that means that you're cropping the image off. So you can just adjust the frame buffer. You can pull it until you don't see that little red mark that tells you that you're missing part of your view.
That grass is looking very low-fish.
While that's rendering, you can see while it's rendering, you can switch between the different channels. So if you wanted to look at what the ambient light is looking like as it's rendering, you can switch to that channel. You can switch to the material ID and watch that come together. The grass and the trees themselves are what's going to take the longest on this rendering. So if you're still doing test renders, you can always turn the fur off until the very last minute. And then when you're ready to go high quality, go turn that first setting back on. So I'm going to go, right now it's denoising. So what that means is the denoiser is going to take that noise out. So if I zoomed in really close, you can see that by default, it's really noisy. That's okay. I don't know. To some people, that's okay. Some people, they're like, I don't like that noise. I want to get rid of that. Well, denoiser is going to smooth. It's using AI or whatever to calculate. It's going to smooth that out. So that's what it's doing. You can see the difference there. It just smoothed it out. Sometimes, though, you lose some detail. So you can actually go into, I just opened up my little corrections panel on the right, and I'm going to pull my opacity on the denoiser. Here it is with no denoiser. And then here it is full. It takes a second. You can see it's recalculating. Oh, maybe it takes longer than a second because it's quite a high res image now. So I already know that I'm just going to pull that back to about 75% because I want a little bit of that noise to come in. Sorry, I'm getting into the weeds. But the last thing I want to do is I want to come in and I want to add a correction layer. So this little plus icon under your layers for exposure. And highlight burn is this thing where when you see the light, the direct light source, like here, and when you see it here, that's called highlight burn. You're looking like right at the lamp. You can bring that down and so that it's not as bad. So look at these clouds right here. If I push that all the way up, you're seeing that it's being blown out. So really all I want to do is bring that highlight burn down so that I'm not blowing out my image. And if you need help identifying what's blown out, you can see under view clamped colors. And so what it's doing is it's saying that this whole thing is blown out. And if I pull this down, it's going to pull that highlight burn down as well. So that's kind of a neat little trick. I don't use that all the time. I just kind of eyeball it. The other thing I like to do is boost the contrast a little bit. And this is where you don't have to go in and play with. I think the neighbors are having a party. Let me shut that. After this, I'll
Friday
go.
afternoon. It's time to party.
I know, it's Friday afternoon. So that's it. So you can basically, you don't have to go back and re-render anything or change your light settings. You just go in and play with this. Do I want it more bright, happy daytime? If I do that, I want to bring my highlight burn down more. Or I want to go ahead and say, no, it's kind of moody, it's kind of sunsetty. I want to leave that sort of in that darker range. This is all just one of those things where you just kind of keep playing with it until you feel like it looks good. Oh my gosh, this is so much fun. See, this is why I can do this. I kind of need, hey, where's your stoop? Stoop, stoop, stoop.
Ooh.
Where's your landing, my friend? You just got grass going right to your front door?
Man, you grew grass so high, it went over my, rock, walkway.
Oh, that's right.
Your grass is overtaking.
Yeah. You can also enable
Next time I'll make bigger rocks.
Bigger rocks. You can also enable lens effects, which is going to be really subtle, but basically wherever you have light coming in, you can push what's called bloom and glare. So when you look at a light and you take a picture of it, the camera lens actually is going to show the way that the light, depending on where the light's coming from, and if you're looking right at it, you're going to get this sort of glowing effect. So that's basically what lens effects does. If you turn it off, it's kind of subtle. You don't really see it. If you turn that back on, you can see that glare that turned on, off, on, off, on. It's just those little details that kind of start to push and make that a little bit more realistic. So, oh my gosh, mad dash to the finish. I'm calling it. I'm calling it. Is that okay?
Yes, it is. It looks fantastic. Wow. No, hey everybody. For Eric's first live stream, that is a home run.
Save.
So thank you for joining us. Yes.
Final.
Thank you everybody for joining us.
Save.
What? Hopefully next week, Aaron will be back. We'll see what we have in store for next week. But yeah, this is awesome. So let us know what you thought. Let us know if you had any other questions for Eric that he can answer now or in the future, or what you'd like to see us render in a future session. We got Eric that can step up to the plate now on some of these. So, and people are loving all the versions. So this is awesome.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to everyone for trusting me to give this a go. And I had fun. So anyway, thank you. I look forward to doing it again. And that's it. I would like to find out how we might be able to pull the users at some point. And, maybe there is a way we can do a session where we just focus on just interior lighting, or maybe we just focus on, working with high poly geometries. So there are ways where we can, drill in a little bit more detail than we did today. This is just getting our feet wet. So with that, Tyson, I'm waiting for you to tell me you are our VJ for today, and I will play the music when ready.
All right. Well, we'll let the comments come in for another moment, and then But yeah, again, thanks everybody, and have a great weekend.